This episode of The Big 6-0 brought to you by Louis Carr Real Estate, helping people in the Hills District find their dream home since 1992. Ready to buy, sell or rent? Check out louiscarr.com.au for all your property needs.
If you're old enough to remember when phones had cords and the only thing that went viral was a cold, then you're in the right place. Welcome to the Big 6-0 with Kaylee Harris and Guy Rawlinson. Because who better to discuss life's second act than two people who still think mature is a type of cheese?
Welcome back to the Big 6-0. I'm your host, Guy Rawlinson, and joining me, as always, is my effervescent co-host and the woman who never forgets her firsts, anything, let alone probably her first glass of shardy, the always wonderful Kaylee Harris.
Hello, how are you? Well, being a woman, we remember stuff. You know, like if you guys piss us off, we remember stuff. We'll go, remember that thing you did a few months ago? Like, I remember that. So we keep that stuff in a special place in our brain.
It doesn't matter how old you are, does it? Whether you're 60, 80 or you're 16.
Exactly.
Is that just a hereditary thing or is it a genetic thing? What is it?
It's a genetic thing. It's a girl thing.
Yeah. Well, of course, if you're tuning in for the first time, glad to have you on board. And if you're a repeat offender, we're glad you're back for more. Today's episode is all about firsts as we dive into iconic milestones, first cars, you know, the ones that were held together with duct tape and dreams sort of thing. First jobs, first records, and yes, we'll probably even touch on first loves.
Oh, God.
Although, let's be honest, some should probably stay locked away in the vault of the past. So let's wind back the clock.
Okay, where are we going?
How about we start with, even before we go into cars and jobs, how about we have a look at our first memories and the earliest thing little Kaylee probably remembers.
Oh, gosh. The earliest thing I remember is I've got an older sister and she's 3 years older than me. And I remember my mum had this beautiful blue vase thing in the house. It was like like the genie bottle from I Dream of Jeannie. It was like that. And it was this beautiful blue thing. And I remember my mum loved it. I remember my sister, I would have been probably 3, maybe 4. My sister went and grabbed it and smashed it on the floor. And in the same straight away, Mum, Kaylee broke your vase. And I was too young to think of anything. And I'm going, wait, what? No. And my mum comes in, you know, and she's, Kaylee Ann, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, but, and I got into trouble. My sister was standing behind Mum laughing. And I think
that's also a first life lesson too, isn't it?
Absolutely it is. And that's probably my first memory of that blue vase. Yeah.
And how old were you again?
I would have been, we were still in Brisbane before we moved. And so I would have been 4.
Yeah.
What about you?
It's interesting. It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, mine was not identical because I remember going out and we were living at Parramatta in Sydney. And I remember thinking, we're really good, and I'll go out and collect the milk when the milkman used to leave the milk bottles on the front door. And so I went out, and I must have been probably maybe 4, maybe a little bit less than 4, because I remember starting preschool, and I dropped the bottle, and it just smashed everywhere.
Were you in trouble?
Yeah, I got into a little bit of trouble because I wasn't supposed to be out. Not so much that the bottle smashed as I managed to actually come out the front door while Mum and Dad were probably still asleep. And so I probably got in trouble because Dad didn't lock the front door and Mum's probably ripped into him because
this
how can the 4-year-old just decide to walk out the front door and, you know, Bob's your uncle kind of thing. But they all morph into one another, don't they? I mean, there's so many of those early memories that you think, oh, was that the first? But I do remember that and thinking, gosh,
yeah,
you know, here I was. And of course, we also had a white Samoyed, and I remember this really vividly. And I do remember I was 4, and there was some purple paint in the shed, and I painted the dog, this white Samoyed, in purple oil paint. Oil. It was oil.
No, oil paint?
It was.
Oh, my gosh. What
Well, the
happened?
dog had to be shorn because you couldn't get the paint out of it. But yeah, there are a lot of those little instances where little guy, we had the macadamia nut tree, and I used to put the I couldn't break them, so I put them in the dog's jaws until it was full because it was very docile, and it would crunch, and so then the dog would open the nuts, and I could eat the nuts inside. Nearly choked
No
the dog.
way.
I don't know. That was just me.
There's a whole nother episode in animals, but I don't know that we'd probably get ourselves into trouble if we told some of those
I
stories.
think so. I think so. But
Well, talking about your first pet, so my first pet, we had a cat. It was a black and white cat. Again, when we were living in Brisbane, where I was born, and his name was Mickey.
Mickey.
And yeah, and then when I was 5, my dad got transferred for work to Melbourne. So we put the cat in a cage and we head out towards the airport, to Brisbane Airport. And I remember we stopped at my grandma's house to say goodbye. And Mum thought, and Grandma lived in sort of inner Brisbane. We were in the outer suburbs. And Mum said, well, we'll let Mickey go out and go to the toilet. That was the last we saw of Mickey. And we had an hour with Grandma before we had to go to the airport, catch the plane. And my sister and I were distraught that the cat, we couldn't find it. I mean, of course it took off. It didn't know where it was terrified, and just gone. That was the end of it. That was the end of Mickey.
I'm sure Mickey went on to bigger and better things.
Well, I'd like to think so.
Yeah,
think so.
It probably went on to, a millionaire's home and was pampered, and, it didn't have to chase its own
it was
food.
Brisbane in 1969.
Good point.
I don't think there were many millionaires in Brisbane in 1969.
Yeah, gotcha.
Right.
No,
Yeah.
we've never had a cat. So we've never had that problem. We've only ever had dogs with the occasional sort of fleeting sort of glimpses of guinea pigs, budgies, things like that.
Yeah.
But we had a little dog, and that was our and he was called Little Joe, and he was named after Little Joe from Bonanza, the TV show.
I was going to say,
Bonanza.
is that from Bonanza?
Yeah. So he was named Little Joe, and he was like this little fox terrier who just...
Is this before the Samoyed?
Yeah, we had 2 Samoyeds. We had one called Candy and one called Casper. Now, Candy, I don't know. Casper, obviously, after the ghost, and Casper, he copped a little bit from someone in the family, and I don't think he got over that purple rinse that went through the fur. But Little Joe was the first pet that we had, and he survived. I'm not sure what actually happened to him in the end, but Casper probably rued the day that he came
to your family,
came to the household and met the 4-year-old. So, but we might move on, and whether it was preschools back in the day, but we all did have to go to big school, didn't we? And I'm not sure which big school you first went to, and whether you remember your first teacher and your first day and what that was like.
Look, I don't. I remember going to, again, in Brisbane, and I went to school, I think, for about a month before we moved. And I remember my first day at school, my sister was already there. She was 3 years older than me. And I remember I pooped on the stairs. And my sister, they went and got my sister and said, you need to clean it up because you're her sister. And I remember my sister grabbing me by the hand, taking me down to the toilets and going, if you need to poop, you have to do it in the bathroom. and then I had to get, the school had special plastic pants for kids who pooped. And you'd have to go to the office because your pants were no good anymore, And so I went and got the plastic pants and put those on. And I was wearing those when Mum picked me up later in the day.
Wow,
so that was my first day.
So many similarities at either end of the age scale, isn't it? With adult nappies, kids.
That's
nappies,
right, old people nappies.
Our legs are the first things to go, and they're the first things to actually start with kids. There's a lot of synergies going on with that. But
what about you? Do you remember your first day? Because you started at Epping West.
I did.
At the school where I met you, but I didn't start till year 4.
That's right. And I remember vividly that first day. I remember the little girl that came up, and I was a little bit nervy, as you do on your first day.
Of course.
And I'm there I can picture myself at the base of the stairs at the classroom that I was going into, which is where they used to have the milk crates and the milk boys that used to come and give you the milk at little lunch, play lunch, recess, whatever you want to call it. And I really didn't want to leave my mum. I really didn't want to. And
Oh,
then little girl, and I still remember her name. Her name was Kathy Sapsford. And
yep.
she just came up, grabbed my hand, hey, come and play with me. And
Oh, bless.
off we went. I don't remember anything other than the kindness that she showed as a little 5-year-old. Just grabbed this little boy's hand, come play with me, and then her friends. I don't know where we went, what we played, what we did, but I just
Wouldn't
remember.
you love to see her again now and say, hey, that had a really big
Yeah,
impact?
and as a 5-year-old to remember that, but not remember the rest of your day, it
Yeah,
obviously
yeah.
it stuck. It
Left
stuck.
a huge
So
impression.
if you're listen, Kathy Sapsford, thank you, thank you. I
Yes. Thank you,
probably
Kathy.
5-year-old me probably never said thank you, but there you
Well, let's
go.
talk about, you talked before about first teacher. I don't remember. The first teacher I remember was in year 4 at Epping West when I started.
Wow.
And I don't remember teachers really before that because we moved around a lot as we changed schools a lot and moved interstate and stuff. But my year 4 teacher at Epping West was Mrs. Pantis.
Yes, I remember Mrs. Pantis.
And she was a big Italian lady. And how do I say this?
Well, you never messed with Mrs. Pantis. I'll tell you
Exactly.
that.
You didn't mess
Yeah.
with Mrs. Pantis. And I could remember one day I was talking to Simone Fletcher. Hello, Simone, wherever you are. Hope you're listening. And Simone and I were talking, and Mrs. Pantis came up and grabbed me by the hair and grabbed Simone by the hair and banged our heads together.
Oh.
And Simone lost a chunk of hair. And her dad came up to the school and had something to say about that. But, we didn't think anything of it at the time because that was what happened at school. You were getting the cane, the girls were getting our heads banged together.
Yeah, that's
That's
big
just
news.
or you get a ruler across your hand or something. So,
I remember
I
Mrs. Pantis. I was in year 3 and our teacher was away. Mrs. Pantis took the class and yeah, it's like,
didn't suffer fools, did she?
not at all. But that was back in the day. There was, like you said, there was the cane and teachers sort of,
Yep,
regardless of probably what the consequences were, they
yep,
they laid down the rules and you stuck by them. Well, most of us stuck by them.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, it's funny. Some of us remember those things. I think I could name every teacher I had from kindergarten through to year 6. I'm not going to do it,
Well, you
but
reminded me of Mrs. Hamilton, who was I think our year 6
year
teacher.
6,
I'd remember her face, but I couldn't remember her name until you said to me, remember Mrs.
Mrs.
Hamilton,
Hamilton.
and
Yeah, there
Miss
was.
Dunn, who was the choir teacher.
Yeah, and so there was Mrs. Nayland and Mrs.
Mrs.
Fowler and
Nayland.
Mrs. Dalton, and then there was Mr. Donnell, and these all weren't all my teachers, but they were,
I remember
Mr.
them.
Quinlan, Mr.
Mr.
Cowell.
Quinlan, did he teach PE?
Yes, he did. He was the girls'
Oh my
favourite.
God. Yes, I was going to say that's probably why I remember him. He was a blonde man, wasn't he? And
He
he
was a
was
blonde
very
man.
fit blonde man. Yeah,
Very, little Kaylee. There's
little
some
Kaylee
things.
was.
Yeah, all of a
Yes,
sudden the memories are coming flooding
that's
back, aren't they?
right.
Yeah, Mrs. Pantis, Mrs. Who?
Well,
Mr.
yeah, that's right,
Quinlan.
Mr. Quinlan.
And then Mr. Jews was the headmaster, and
I
it
remember
was,
him. Yeah.
yeah, it was, and it'd be lovely to think that some of those teachers are still around today, but and they probably weren't nearly as old as we thought they were.
Exactly, yeah. They're
I'm
probably in
sure,
their 20s and we figured they
yeah.
were 60 or something.
So, Mr. Quinlan, if you're there,
Yes,
we
hello.
have a Facebook page. um, High school, all those sort of things, dances, boyfriends. I guess that's sort of that era too. Like, I mean, there were first loves and first dances and all those sort of things. Have you got any fond memories of firsts during those years?
First, I think I can remember the first dance I went to was my parents used to drop my sister and I off at the Tallabudgera National Fitness Camp on the Gold Coast for a week every Christmas holidays. And at the end of the week, they'd have a dance. And I would have been 11, maybe 12. And it was the first time I'd gone to a dance. And this boy who was so old, I mean, he would have been
Mm.
13, he was so old, came up to me and said, oh, do you want to dance? And I was so scared that, I just said, no, 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 no. And I backed myself into a corner. And that was my first memory of a dance. But then when we were 16, we went to the under 18s disco at the local RSL club. And I remember a lot more about that. And that was,
Mm.
the first time you sort of really, because I went to a girls' school, it was the first time and I didn't have brothers. So for me to interact with boys was really strange. at this
Yeah.
under 18s.
That's a big thing, isn't it? If you're at an all-boys school or a girls' school, it's a really hard time in your life because there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
And you're not necessarily equipped, even if you're at a co-educational school, let alone if you're at a dance with a hall full of boys.
Yeah. How do I talk to these things called boys? Like, how do I interact with you?
What do I do?
And did you remember a first dance?
I remember at the end of year 6, we had a dance. We had a year 6 formal.
Yeah, wow.
Which was at the local high school, and I remember that quite vividly. And I remember asking, I was really keen on this girl. Hi, Robin Scott. I think you're from Brisbane.
Hi, Robin.
Yeah, she was a vice captain, I think, or she was a prefect at the school as well. So I had to sort of, my gosh, I think she's prettiest thing that you can have when you're 11 years old, but also a prefect. I thought, gosh, that's going to be tough. But I remember.
But you were the vice captain.
Yes, I know. It doesn't matter though, does it?
Oh, of course it does.
You still have to be really brave when you're 11 years old and you're asking a girl to go to your end of year dance. So I hung around out the front of the school with 2 mates for moral support. Yeah. And she must have known because she always used to leave early, and she came out with 2 girlfriends, and I thought, someone must have said something. So that sort of made it a bit easier. But that was the first dance I remember, and I took her to the dance, and I don't think I danced with her all night. I think it was just the concept of, oh, wow, there you go.
Someone's agreed to go with me.
Someone agreed to go with me. But then, like in later years, in teen years, when you actually, you thought, oh, hang on, this person might like me in return rather than just I'm going to a dance. Then it was all different. There was the under-18s disco at the local YMCA and all that sort of thing. So, no, it was a lot of fun, and all those firsts and those first parties. Oh, do you remember your first teenage party?
Oh, kind of, yeah. I'm 16, I think. But going back to the dance, the only reason I go back there because it reminds me of the first kiss. So there was a whole bunch of us girls dancing in a big circle, as you did, and with some boys. And one of the boys was the brother of a girl I went to school with, and I didn't know him at all, actually. And halfway through this song, he comes over and starts kissing me. And because the only kissing I'd done until that point was the Sean Cassidy posters on the wall at home, it was. No one told me, thank you, Fiona, no one told me that there's tongue involved.
Oh.
So Stephen Neal, if you're listening, he comes over and starts pashing me, and he puts his tongue in my mouth. And I remember thinking it was the most disgusting thing I've ever, and I'd pushed him away. And I went, no, yuck. And I pushed him away and I ran off to the girls' toilets. Oh and Fiona comes running after me, and she's like, what happened? I said, he put his tongue in my mouth. And she goes, well, yeah, duh. And I said, you didn't tell me that they do that. And, of course, the next Monday at school, I was a bit of a laughing stock because I'd never kissed a boy before.
Oh.
I pushed this guy away, and anyway, so that was my first kiss. But tell me about yours.
That was probably pretty traumatic. I mean,
it was a little.
Yeah, wow, gosh, these days it'd be more than trauma. There'd be a lawsuit, I would imagine, and some criminal charges, I'd imagine. But
tell me about your first kiss.
It was at a party. The girls across the road were having. Well, the older sister of one of the girls across the road was having a party. She was much older. She was, I think we were 13, 12 or 13, and she was 14 or 15. Yeah, and she had a party, really, but for some reason the younger sister was allowed to invite a lot of friends, and of course, it all ended up with, let's go down to the garage, and so there was probably a dozen of us, and spin the bottle.
Oh, yes.
And
God, I hated that game.
Innocent me had no idea what this game was.
Yeah.
And, it was, and strange, it came my way. First spin, and I thought...
So the bottle landed on you?
Yeah, landed on me. And then they spun it again. I thought, well, that wasn't very exciting. It spun on me and pointed at me. What happened?
Nothing
and
happened.
Then it went to another girl. Much more experienced girl. She wasn't any older, but she was obviously a little bit more worldly.
Yeah. Nice way to put it.
Yeah. And Amanda, if you're listening, thank you. No. It was one of those things. I think it was just a spin the bottle first sort of
how old were you?
Party. I I might have. I don't know if I was 13. I might have been 12.
Did you know
I
about
might have been
tongue then?
No.
Oh, good. Oh, thank God, because I thought it was just
No.
me.
What do you? I didn't know what spin the bottle was. What are you talking about, woman? And I didn't have a Sean Cassidy poster or anything
to
on the
practice
wall.
on. You didn't have a
practice
Wonder
on.
Woman poster to practice on.
No, didn't have anything. I mean, geez, it was the fact that I didn't even know the game, let alone it probably says a lot, doesn't it?
Oh my gosh.
So, but we got through it. We survived.
Yeah.
Now I know you and I both shared, apart from school, we actually both shared probably our first job as far as being paid or not. I don't know whether Macca's was your first job or
Macca's was my first part-time job.
Right.
Yep, at 14 and 9 months.
Yep.
And you and I were at the same Macca's, and we've discussed that before. But my first full-time job was when I was 16. I left school and I got a job working for a microfilm company, and it sounded very impressive. It's
still does to me.
you know. Yeah, exactly right. But my job involved sitting on the floor and ironing bits of paper to go into a microfilm machine, because I had to make sure they were perfectly flat, otherwise the machine wouldn't accept them. And if you can imagine, you've got like a proper clothing iron, and I'm sitting on the floor ironing these bits of paper, and the fumes coming off from the ink and everything was horrible and it gave me a terrible headache. And I think I lasted 2 hours.
Oh, so you're an ironing woman for 2 hours?
Yeah, and then I got up and said, "I'm sorry, I'm going," and I left and I walked out. I just thought, I can't do this. I can't do this.
What were the fumes? They were.
Well, maybe it was coming off the paper or coming off the ink, but every time I ironed a bit of paper, all this grey smoke would come off the paper. And I'm inhaling that.
Oh, you had your iron set on cotton. It should have been on wool or silk.
Oh, exactly, yeah. Or print.
Or print.
Or microfilm.
Microfilm.
Yeah.
That's an oversight by manufacturers everywhere on irons, not to have the microfilm setting. So 2 hours.
2 hours, and I think the pay rate, I think I was getting like $48 a week.
Yeah, I had this conversation a couple of months ago when a couple of friends of mine thought that I was the richest kid among all of us when I got my first job after Macca's, and I went and worked for a local newspaper over in Liverpool in Sydney.
Oh wow!
And because during there were other careers I wanted, and while I was doing senior year 12, I found out that I was not suited for them purely because I've got this blue-green colour deficiency. So like going into the Air Force, press the red button for eject and the yellow button to bomb something, and I wouldn't know which one was which.
Okay.
And then I wanted to go into the cops. And of course, people say, well, what difference would that make? Well, it does. You say, I saw a brown car travelling down the road and it was green.
And it was a blue
it doesn't
car.
Look good in court, does it?
No.
So I decided, okay, well, look, I'm going to either become a PE teacher or someone said, oh, you're right, well, why don't you become a journalist, which doesn't really stack up when you're in year 12. I mean,
well, it wasn't a thing back then, was it?
No.
Journalism wasn't a career that was put in front of us, really.
And in year 12, the idea was, let's see how much you can write. You've got to write 3 pages of stuff, and being a journalist means you need to be fairly concise. So I went to the local paper, and my mother taught me how to touch type and all that sort of thing with the old Remington typewriter, and I got a bit of a portfolio of stories. They were paying me $6 a story, a princely sum of $6 a story in 1981, and I had probably 20 stories under my belt. So when I went for a cadetship, I got it. So I was being paid $96 a week.
Wow.
My first job in 1982.
That would have been huge money.
Yeah. And how good was it when I went to $114 a week? I thought,
my goodness.
Gosh, it meant I could
triple figures.
It meant I could put fuel in my first car, Kaylee Harris. What was yours? I think we've talked about this before, though.
Yes, it was a 3-cylinder Daihatsu Charade.
Nice.
And it was manual, and I had no idea how to drive a manual. So I bought it, and then I had to get my dad to come and drive it home. And then I spent the whole weekend going up and down my street, learning how to drive it so I could take it to work on the Monday.
So you bought it just off spec. You didn't take anyone with you?
Yeah.
You just said, I'm going to buy this car.
Yeah, I think so. I actually can't remember. But my dad at the time, my dad had a brain tumor, and the doctor had taken his license off
Right.
him. And I said, Dad, I can't bring this car home. I said, can you come bring it home? He said, I'm not allowed to. They've taken my license. And I said, well, I won't tell if you won't tell Dad. And he's like, okay. So Dad came with me and drove it home, and it was my first experience of driving a manual car.
Good on you, Dad, and
Yeah, yeah,
Kaylee. Good on you for going in blind and saying, "I
yep,
like the look of this car.
yeah.
I can't
I
drive it."
loved it. It was a really cool little hatchback, 3-cylinder hatchback. Had not a lot of power, but it was zippy, and I loved it. It was a girly car,
What colour was it?
white.
Is that what? Oh, it wasn't like a canary yellow or something
No,
really.
no, little white one. Yeah.
Wow. How long did it take you to learn to drive that?
Well, I spent the entire weekend, and by Monday, I was going okay enough to get myself to work.
Certainly a lot better than the 120 hours you need to. Is it 120 you need to clock up now before you can get your?
I think, yeah, I
Yeah.
think
So you
so.
spent the weekends and
Yeah,
you were good.
I was good. I
Yeah.
could drive
Right.
a manual after that. Yep.
Fantastic. Love your
What
work.
about you? Some sort of GTR Tirana or something?
Oh, I wish. I didn't know. Yeah, I would have loved a GTR XU1, of course, and never had the money. Did anyone want a Hey Charger, burnt orange? No, I always wanted a burnt orange Datsun 180B. Had to be
Oh,
burnt
wow.
orange.
Yeah,
Yeah,
with
couldn't
with
find one.
the vinyl roof, like
Yes,
the double color, the dual color.
yes,
Yep,
yes, had
yep.
to have that. And Mr. Quinlan again, hello. The PE teacher we had at school had a burnt orange Datsun
Oh,
180B with a
wow.
white vinyl roof, and I thought, yeah, he's pretty.
Did you get it? Did you?
No,
Oh,
no, I got a Datsun 180B, but it was this baby poo brown sort of colour.
yeah.
It
Well,
had a vinyl roof.
that was the other color they came in, like white vinyl roof and baby poo brown on the bottom.
Yeah, there was a purple one for sale, and my father wouldn't let me buy it. But you're not having a purple car, mate. So, but the Datsun 180B, it had the mags and had the black plastic rear louver,
Oh,
all
yes.
that
Look
sort
at
of
you
thing.
go. You would have been quite the, fetch.
And had to put the Voxon 7-band graphic
Of course.
equalizer with the cassette player
Yeah.
in there. And whenever it rained, the back seats would leak because there was
Oh, my gosh.
it was just puddles. I'm talking puddles in the floor at the back. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. How much was your first car?
I think the Daihatsu was about $3,000 or something.
Oh, you were rich.
Yeah. Well, no. I think I borrowed the money.
Oh,
Or Dad
okay.
gave me some or something. It was like
Okay.
2.5, $3,000.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? I mean, that I remember the Datsun was $1,750, and I saw one not very long ago, and it was obviously been done up, and it was something like 30 grand.
Oh my
A lot of those
gosh.
old
Yeah.
cars,
Yeah.
old cars, gosh. I mean, when I owned that car, it wasn't 10 years old, and yet now you
Well,
look
they
at
had Datsun had the 180B, the 240K,
yep.
and another one.
They had a 120Y, they
A
had a
120Y.
200B, they had a 120Y, a 200B, a 180B, they had a 240Z, they had a 260Z, they had a 280ZX.
Yeah. Oh,
They had
yeah.
everything. But I
Yeah.
had the baby brown poo colour 180B with
Did
the
you pick
vinyl
up many
roof.
chicks with that?
Oh, you kidding me? I was always the designated driver at parties. Does that count?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. You party animal, you.
Yeah, so okay, cars, jobs, we've had pets, teachers.
Yeah.
That first place you lived in Brisbane, was it in Brisbane? Do you remember that? Do you remember the house?
Yeah, very well. On stilts. A typical Queensland house on stilts.
Right.
Remember it very well. Yeah.
Wow. It's amazing. How long were you there for?
Well, we left Queensland when I was 5.
Right. Okay.
And Mum and Dad bought it about a year before I was born. So I wasn't there that long, but it's funny. Every time I go back to Brisbane, I go for a drive past it just to have a look at it. And
It's a thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a thing.
What about you?
I remember my youngest will say this is a true story, but when you think about it logically, it's not at all. I've taken all my girls just to drive past my first house.
Yeah.
And I can remember from the back door to the front door all the rooms and everything that are in that
Yeah.
house, even though
Yeah.
we moved when we were 4. My daughter, there's an Italian family last time we were there, and only because I saw them out the front, and it's probably a bit presumptuous of me to think they're Italian, but I could hear them speaking. Anyway, but my daughter, who at the time was probably 3, will tell you to this day that I left her in the car, went in and had lunch with that Italian family. and then just unattended, and then came
Oh
out
my
after I'd finished lunch. She will tell you. So when she has a podcast or whatever they have,
Oh, you're in for it.
and she will have that as a memory.
Yeah.
And it just didn't happen because who does that?
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe I did. No, I didn't. So was your car your first big purchase? Do you remember?
Yeah, probably that, and maybe a holiday. But I like other than holidays and cars, I think probably the first big purchase was the first house when I got married.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which
Okay.
I paid the princely sum of $250,000 for in a geographical heart of Sydney.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not Sydney, well, the city in general.
Yeah. That's that. When was that?
That was in 1997.
Right. Okay. I was going to say once again, you're super rich because I paid $127,950, but that was in 1989.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, that's about kind of right, isn't it?
Yeah, it was.
On par,
It was sort of near the boom of housing in Sydney at that particular time. Things started to go up, sort of. But you mentioned a holiday. Your first holiday. Where was that? What was that?
So first holiday was with family, and we went to Mum and Dad took us to Disneyland when we were.
Oh my! Not Woy Woy, not Ettalong. Disneyland. Thank you very much.
Well, I've got relatives over there, so we had another reason to go. So in 1978. We went to Disneyland, and it was a total disaster. My sister and I were not getting along, and I can remember I remember we went to Disneyland, and Dad and I went one way, and Mum and my sister went another way because my sister and I were just at each other the whole time. So I didn't see her all day. We were just separated, and I just remember it being quite traumatic and a lot of fighting and arguing and stuff like that. So that's the first overseas trip I remember.
Yeah. I mean, we weren't rich enough to have overseas trips. We had relatives, but like I said, they were at Long Jetty.
Oh my gosh.
Disneyland.
So you went to Long Jetty?
Excuse me. Oh my gosh.
Oh, I went to Queensland a lot, like at holidays, like every Aussie kid does. But I thought you meant the first overseas.
Well,
holiday,
I probably did, but yeah. Did you have a first friend that you remember?
I remember my first friend that I remember was a girl called Julie Brooks. I was friends with when I went to Eastwood Public School for a little bit.
Oh, Eastwood.
And, yeah. Well, I mean, was it before I went to Epping West? Yeah, it was. I went to Eastwood briefly for 6 months, and Julie Brooks was my friend. It was the first friend I kind of really remember having.
Right.
Then I remember, a few other friends.
Yeah.
Like your good self at Epping West.
Yeah, wow. Hi, Julie.
What about you?
Oh, Matthew. His name was Matthew. He lived down the road from us, about 4 houses, which seemed like in another postcode when you're 4 years old.
Yeah.
And we used to ride scooters to each other's house up and down, and that's where we were. Wow. We used to get in trouble because we used to do some stuff.
Yeah. Well, like what?
Just stuff. Just stuff that 4-year-olds do that they think, well, hang on. Yeah, I'm 2 houses away from my house. You're 2 houses away from your house. We can get away with just about anything.
Anything. Yeah.
And no one's ever going to find out or see us. So, we used to get into a little bit of mischief. But, I remember it clear as day. Matthew, I don't know whatever became when we moved house, and as you do. I mean, everyone's your friend when you're 4, right? Like
that's right.
Hello,
you met
Matthew,
them for 30 wherever
seconds.
You are.
Yes, Matthew, if you remember living in Buller Street at Parramatta.
Yeah. There you go.
I'm still around. Now, something that was big in our lives was music. And I know you were talking to me earlier about music and all those sort of things.
Yeah.
What are your recollections of that whole period?
Yep, the first record I bought, and it was a single my parents bought for me. And we were visiting Grandma and Grandpa up on the Gold Coast in 1974. And I was in love with the song. Oh, let me just play a bit of it for you.
January, sick and tired, you've been hanging on me. You make me sad with your eyes. You're telling me lies. Don't go, January. Don't be cold, don't be angry to me. You make me sad, come and see. Oh, January.
How good is that? And I drove my grandmother nuts. I put the single on her little old turntable, and I played it over and over and over. As soon as it finished, I started again. As soon as it finished, I started again. And I put it on for about the 5th time, and I remember Grandma going off. And she's going,
Wow.
"Don't play that song anymore. I can't stand it." You know, that was my first.
Wow.
My
And you
first
probably wore the
album.
stylus out, and anyone under the age of probably 30, if you're wondering
Doesn't
what a
know what a
stylus,
stylus
Google
is.
it. Okay,
Yeah,
just
exactly.
Google it.
What about you?
Oh, look, I'm almost embarrassed. And
Don't be.
rather than me explain it, I'll play it for you now.
Okay.
But I'm gonna be where the lights are shining on me, like a rhinestone cowboy, riding out on a horse in a star-spangled rodeo, like a rhinestone cowboy.
There you go. Told you.
Oh,
Told you that they look.
oh
Look,
my
they're
God. And you're gonna
iconic.
be-
They're iconic songs. They're not sort of thing that a 12 or 13-year-old boy would probably normally listen to. But Glenn Campbell, he was a predecessor
He-
to your John Denvers of this world, and he had such great songs like Galveston and Where's the
Where's the Playground Susie? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And Wichita Lineman.
I know.
I loved Glenn Campbell.
So
Don't
does
ever
that
be-
mean a 12-year-old's musical taste was very mature, or did that mean I
Yeah,
was just a bit of a
definitely.
loser?
You were ahead of your time. You're ahead of your time, because I was a bit into, before January by Pilot, I was a bit into the Sandpipers, Guantanamera, but yeah. So, and that's definitely not as cool as Glenn Campbell.
Yeah, look, I evolved after that, and 14, 15, I was very much into the Beatles as a 14 and 15. I loved the Beatles, everything from
Yeah.
their really early stuff to later stuff. But then that whole disco craze came in, and I don't know whether, I love Electric Light Orchestra,
Yeah, yeah.
all those sort of bands. I don't know whether that was just related to the fact that I was going to the Blue Light Disco and there were girls there. And so
probably was.
I need to learn how to,
Yeah.
but yeah, it was all those sort of things. But concerts as well. Did you
Yeah.
ever go to concerts when you were a teenager?
Well, I remember being 16 and going to some of the radio station concerts, like 2SM at the time had concerts at the Opera House with Dragon and those bands at the time, and I loved those. But the first proper concert I went to was Kiss at Moore Park.
Ooh, big time.
And that was and Mum didn't want me to go because she thought Gene Simmons was disgusting.
Did she know you were going?
Yeah, she knew I was going and she let me go, but she wasn't happy about it because that whole rock and roll influence of, they were bad boys.
Yeah,
Gene
of
Simmons and all the
course.
boys in Kiss and Paul Stanley, they were bad.
How old were you then? You must have been like 16, 17. What was it?
Yeah, 16. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, certainly beats the pants off, so to speak, Glenn Campbell if I went to a, But I can't remember. I think my first concert was probably just a local band. Like I think I probably went and saw the Radiators or the Angels or something like
Oh,
that.
yeah.
It would have been at one of the
Oh,
RSLs or something like that. So
how good.
yeah, and so I'm supporting local talent, and you're actually going out of your way to see bad boys that your mum doesn't
That's
approve of.
My mother was horrified.
Yeah, which leads me to ask a question.
Hmm.
First boyfriend?
Well, he's probably listening. So, hello, Colin. First boyfriend was Colin, and he loves our podcast. He listens. Hello.
Hello, Colin.
He wasn't my first kiss because I told you about that earlier, but he was my first boyfriend and my first a few other things which we won't discuss. And yeah, so hello, Colin.
Well, thank you for supporting the show, Colin. It's nice to have you on board. So, if you've got friends, point them this
Yeah.
way. Give us a thumbs up on Google as well,
Yeah.
because we need all the support we
And I-
can get.
And I think I sent you a picture of Colin and I, and Colin's got the Miller shirt on. God love him. He's got a bit of a mullet happening.
Oh, he's just a fashion
We were
statement.
very cool.
He's a
Oh,
fashion
he was.
statement, isn't he?
What about your first girlfriend? Boy, am I right in saying it was a girlfriend?
Well, good point. Good point. And fair.
Yeah.
And fair. I don't know how far we need to go back. I remember I had a little girlfriend when I was 5. Does that count?
Aw.
Does that count?
No, that doesn't count.
That doesn't really count.
No.
Hello, Shana, if you're there. Yeah. And then I had a bit of a crash with the girl that was living next door to the people that we were living at, that were living, the grandparents had a granddaughter, and I didn't know that I actually quite liked her. But then when you're 13 and 14, there's a lot happening, isn't there? And all of a sudden, anything that's upright.
Yes, that's right. Anything that's breathing is a possibility.
Yeah, so there was always this thing where she'd come and stay on the weekend at her grandparents' place, and she'd be throwing a footy or something up in the air so as you knew that she was there. And
that's classic.
And if she wasn't doing that, I'd be throwing a footy up just so she knew I was. Nothing ever came of it, but maybe I can't remember. Maybe. But yeah, I think it's that time, isn't it, where you think, well, gosh, the things you look back on and you think, but it's nice too that you've reconnected with some of these people who, and we're all sort of more mature. Is that the way?
Yeah,
to put
and
it
you
now?
can laugh about a lot of that history.
You can.
I caught up with Colin a fefew weeks ago. He doesn't live in Sydney anymore, and he came down to visit some family. We caught up for a coffee and had a great time. We had a great laugh. So you share such history with these people, and it's wonderful to still have them in your life in some way.
Yeah, and it's all very platonic these days, and you think, you can laugh at some of the stories and look back and think to yourself, how much fun are they? Whether it was your first alcoholic drink or whatever. Are there any other firsts that stick out in your mind, though, from your growing up? Or
oh my gosh, I think we've covered.
How about, do you remember going to the movies for the first time, or anything like the drive-in or anything like that?
Well, I remember the first movie, the first movie that scared me was Jaws.
Oh,
and that's the first movie I remember seeing, because I was 12. It came out in 76, and it frightened the daylights out of me. And I think that's the first, maybe I saw Disney movies before that, but I don't remember.
Yeah,
they didn't obviously have a huge impact. What about you?
Yeah, I don't remember seeing a scary movie as a kid. I remember the first movie I got taken to, and like you, they're fairly all G-rated sort of things. I remember seeing Born Free.
Oh, stop! I love that. I saw that, but it was at home on the telly, I think.
Yeah, my great aunt and I went with her, and we went to see Born Free, and then there was things like Bed Knobs and Broomsticks and Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, all the Disney sort of classics. I remember Dad not telling Mum, and we went to the Valhalla. I think that's at Newtown. The Valhalla Cinema. And he took me to see King Kong, like the original King Kong.
Wow!
I don't know why.
Wow.
But he did, and I remember it was packed. The Valhalla was packed. There were people sitting on the stairs in the aisles to watch this movie.
Wow.
But I think the very first movie that I saw that was scary was Friday the 13th.
Okay, yeah, that would have scared a lot of people.
Yeah, that and I certainly didn't see The Exorcist when it came out or anything like that.
Well, I was able to convince my dad to take me to see Saturday Night Fever in 1978. And it was R-rated.
Yeah, it was.
And I remember we got there, and Dad's like, I didn't know this was R-rated. It's like, oh, Dad, please, please take me to see it because all my friends want to see it, and because we're all, into the music and stuff. And he's like, oh, okay. So he took me to see it.
That's a very dark movie when you look at it. That has a lot of very dark themes.
Yeah, definitely.
And you're right. It was R-rated, and then there was the M-rated version for television. But things have changed, like we have. Times it's just the way of the world, isn't it?
Yeah.
Hey.
Well, it's been a great chat.
All right. Well, first for me, I'm probably going to go and make dinner. That'll be the first thing.
There you go.
I'll see you next time.
You will.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
The views and opinions expressed on the Big 6-0 are personal and reflect those of the hosts and guests. They do not represent the views or positions of any affiliated organisations or companies. This podcast is intended for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be construed as professional advice. Please consult with a qualified professional for guidance on any personal matters.
And before we go, let's give credit where credit is due. Kaylee Harris and I came up with all the genius content for this week's episode. Our producer, Nick Abood, well, he keeps the lights on and makes sure we don't accidentally upload a cat video instead of a podcast. So, thanks for keeping us on track, Nick. Nick?